All right, what are we doing here?
We're seeing this new movie.
Kantara?
Kantara.
Indian
It's
horror
not really
film.
new.
In the theaters.
Well,
Here we are. We're heading in. We're heading into the show. We got tickets in beautiful downtown Germantown, Maryland, to see an Indian film.
jawohl.
So we're going to head in, and then we'll give you a little review on the way out before our big review.
Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.
Yippee-Ki-Yay, mother.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Welcome to Yippee-Ki-Yay Mother Podcast. Well, hi. What? There's only three of us. What happened?
It's sad. We're the only three that saw the movie.
Oh, let me explain. We, Debbie, Sean, and I went to a actual theater showing of Kantara. Is that how I pronounce it?
That's how I'm going to pronounce
Kantara. So we're going to talk about that film first, and then we're going to bring the gang on for what you watch after we do our review. So I just want to give everybody a heads up. The other thing is we're not sure about the next film we're going to do. So if you guys have any ideas, please put them in the comments. You've been great about commenting. I'm talking about our Indian friends. Of course, if anybody else is watching, you want to comment, please comment. But if there's an Indian film you really want us to see that's streaming, it's a little more difficult for us to get to the theater. This was exciting that the three of us actually got out to the theater. It was an amazing experience. But if you have another recommendation, please do it, and we'll take a look and see which one we're going to do next week. But let's talk about this one now. So, Sean, what is this film we went and saw at the movie theater?
Okay, this film is it's called Kantara, which I believe means the forest, the English translation. And what's unique about it, and I think it's one of the reasons people really love this film. Well, I shouldn't get into why they love it. It's basic. First, let's just give the basic plot. It begins in like 1847 with a king, and he has everything. He has wealth, he has power, but he's not happy. So a wise man says, search pilgrimage sites, where you'll find your joy. And he goes around from place to place. And finally, he gets to this small village, which is in his realm. And there's like a stone, which is like the idol of a local deity. And when he sees it, he's overcome by this profound sense of peace. So he says, I want to take this back to the palace with me. And they're like, no, you can't take our God. He goes, well, I'll give you something else. And then the God appears and goes, ah! And the God appears and says, you can have this, but what you have to do is keep this land to the villagers and in the distance in which you can hear me scream. And then he does this scream. Ralph, do you have that scream?
I do. Hang on. Here we go. Ready?
Whoa!
Yeah,
and it rings through the forest.
And again, as I said, the sound was ear-splitting in the movie theater. I mean, cranked way up. So when he does that yell, it literally goes through your whole body. I mean, I think
that's why he did it.
Right.
So he takes the idol, and the villagers get this degree of autonomy. So it cuts to many years later.
And they cannot. So the idea is they can't sell the land, right? They just stay on the land. The
villagers
get
to stay on the land.
They stay on the land,
but the land still belongs to the king.
Right.
He's the landlord.
Okay.
But he can't displace him or anything.
Right.
As because he's made to steal.
Peace will stay. If they stay, peace stays.
If anyone tries to break the deal, they will die.
Right.
With blood in their mouth.
Vomiting blood.
And the god, which I forgot what the name is a demigod.
Yeah.
Says, and if I were willing to forgive you, I have a companion demon who will never forgive you.
Right.
Who will kill you.
They set it up pretty well.
Yeah. So then it's set essentially present day.
It flash forwards to 1970.
Yeah, where now the kingdom is gone, but the descendants of the king are still the landlords. And one of them says there's many natural resources. And it's important that it's like they have some farmland and they're next to a forest. I'll explain why that's important later. And the guy's like, every year the landlord has to put on this festival. This is one of the things people are excited about this movie,
right?
Because it shows that I think it's the Tuva region of India, It's really specific to that area. And every year there's a festival that the landlord has to pay for where someone impersonates the god, but they also become possessed by the god in theory as well.
In theory,
so they
right.
can speak.
It's called the Buddha Cola. The Buddha
Cola. Yeah, and so they speak for it. And at one in the 70s, the landlord's like, well, I am going to sell this land, valuable resources. And the god's like, no, you're not. And he's like, you're just a man. You're not really the god. And he's like, well, if I'm just a man, you'll know where I go. And he runs into the forest.
He says, if I disappear in the forest, I'm a deity.
Yeah.
And what happens?
He goes and he disappears in the forest.
And he is the father of Shiva, who is essentially the main Shiva. This movie was directed by Rishab Shetty, who also starred in it.
He also wrote it, directed, and starred in it.
Playing Shiva. And Shiva,
he really reminded me of the guy from the woods in RRR too.
Yeah, same vibe. And Shiva, he's potentially a deity as well, because he's named Shiva, who's both a destroyer and a protector, right? In the Indian. Now again, please, if we're getting this wrong, tell us what we got wrong, and educate us, because we're all, the myth of this stuff and the religious stuff that's going on is lost on us, but the visual and what's going on is not. So keep going, John. I'm sorry. So 1970.
The story makes one final leap to essentially present day. And the villagers.
Well, we see right before we jump to present day, we do see the landlord choking on his own vomit, the blood. Okay, so it's real. He's legit a deity, and he disappeared into the woods.
Yeah. So.
And we cut to 1990.
And there's considerable tension between the villagers who use the forest. They're on the edge of the forest, and it's a protected forest, and there's government agents there. And the head government agents are really hostile to the villagers. And he looks like, who does he look like? He looks
like a skinny rock. I mean, the guy's
he looks like a skinny rock. Another charismatic,
Oh my God.
There's some great actors in these movies.
Yeah.
And Shiva plays essentially the same role as the guy in RRR who went to get the girl. He's like the village protector. He's like a tough guy.
Well, remember, okay, so when we come to 1990, there is a landlord who's taking care of everything.
Yeah.
And Shiva is a thug for the landlord. I mean, he's an enforcer for the landlord at this point.
Well, he's kind of an enforcer, and he's kind of a ne'er-do-well. He doesn't really have a job.
He's 20 at this point. So we met him in 1970. He's the kid that winks at the little girl across, right? Yeah. So he's the son of the deity. And now we meet him when he's 20-something years old. And he's still a kid. He's a big kid.
And he lives in the forest
with all his buddies, with all his frat buddies, or people he grew up with.
Yeah, and none of them have like real jobs. So a lot of the people in the village seem to look at him as disreputable. But he's also, although he is a thug for the landlord, and he's the landlord's friend, and he asks favors to the landlord for people.
Right.
He's also the village protector.
Oh, he's very right. He's both a destroyer and a protector.
Exactly. And here's the thing about why it's important for the forest. In this Tuval region, they view the world in three realms. There's the land that's farmed and used by humans. And then there's the forest or wild places. And then there's the spiritual realm. And people who live in the forest, like Shiva, makes his living in the forest. He's an inhabitant of the forest. And according to their faith, those people are most in tune with the spiritual world. And when the deity appears, it's through someone who goes into the forest.
Right. And
because that's the borderland.
And what's happening is Shiva is having hallucinations about his father. His father keeps popping up, getting behind his back and doing that shout, right? Right.
Yeah.
And as he's in the woods. And he's also got a cousin who's the actual deity of the village, right? That I forget what his actual function is. So there's a lot of stuff going on here that is like beyond we're just not used to seeing this kind of thing. But the spectacle, like the bull races, the bull riding races, and just the stuff that goes on in the village, and the guy's treehouse. He literally lives or they hang out at a tree. He lives with his mother, who feeds him all the time. But he hangs out with his buds in the treehouse. And one of his buds is some guy who's always trying to have sex. One of his buds is some dude that's real tough and always is going to be tough until he confronts people, and then he's not so tough anymore.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like comedy that's going on in this thing.
That's what I love about Indian films.
I don't know if you guys heard me, but I was laughing out loud. Like there were funny stuff going on. You know, we can't spoil this because we really don't know what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
But
I tell you one, I did not understand this film at all. And Sean, you got to agree with me. We didn't know what we were watching, and because the subtitles were just so extensive
and fast.
Particularly in the beginning when they were given the backstory.
Yeah.
They were up there, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. But when you get to the okay, so it's so there's flip-flopping allegiances going all over this place. So you mentioned the forest ranger who comes in, who's got to take the forest over. Shiva's girlfriend, or a woman from the village, becomes his girlfriend, ends up working for the forest department. So now her allegiances are split, right?
Everyone views her as a traitor.
Everyone's viewing her as a traitor. And Shiva's in the middle of this. He's like bouncing between all these worlds.
And the landlord.
And the landlord.
They think is helping him.
Right. And like I said in my little mini review when we did outside, there's a lot of predictable things that happen. But it doesn't matter because that last 15 minutes of the film is just astounding. Astounding. I was sitting at the edge of my seat going, I just can't believe the spectacle that's going on in this thing. And it was glorious. It was glorious. The energy that guy, the writer, director, star of this thing was amazing.
Another guy with great hair.
Oh, they're all, listen, you know, they're putting their, well, except the forest ranger didn't. He was bald, but he was stunning.
I think he shaved his head.
He looked great.
Yeah, but he seemed like he came to an understanding of Shiva. You know,
ultimately they team up, obviously, and that's what I mean by predictable. I knew kind of
RRR.
And there's one character in here that might as well have been Snidely Whiplash, you know, going ha ha ha. This is what's going on, right? But it doesn't matter because when you get to that ending, the excitement and the energy and the just profound explosion of emotion, just it's amazing. I've never been somewhere in a movie where I felt the way I felt at the end of that film. It's just incredible.
Now, Debbie, what did you think of the movie?
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't understand a single thing about it, but I liked it. I enjoyed it so much. But you researched it afterwards because I know you said the same thing. We got in the car after we watched it. We said, "Now, what was it that we saw?"
Yeah.
No, I wish. Now, here's my wish to the filmmakers that they really would invest in dubbing these movies because if you're going to sell it here in the United States, and I'm thinking it's a great market for that film or for any of these Indian films, but you have to risk the money that you spend on dubbing it instead of subtitles. It's got to be dubbed because the action happens so fast. And I would never think of slowing the movie down. Just keep it as is, but make sure that you use English language dubbing.
I mean, I hear what you're saying because I hate dubbing. I can't stand listening to.
Nobody likes dubbing, of course, but then to understand. But you have to in order to understand because it's too beautiful.
But don't you think this is just a function of it just not understanding what's going on, like the religious aspects and the fact that we have deities and landlords? Sean mentioned it in a little mini review, like you're dealing with something that we're not used to here in the United States, right?
But I would like to know about it. I mean, it's fascinating how they view. And I don't know if the modern people from India are going for these, these older ideas of the land, the landlord and the semi-gods.
In 1990.
I'd like to find this out. This is interesting. But
I hear what you're saying about I don't understand the dubbing. These captions were flying by. They were flying by,
particularly in the beginning.
Yeah, they were, and it was like I said earlier, it was super loud. I've never experienced something.
And you know what,
loud.
Ralph and Sean, I never took that Evelyn Wood speed reading class. So I'm screwed. Yeah.
Well,
I'm like,
I mean,
what?
but
I'm
we
through the dialogue.
still got what was going on. There's no question.
Well, there were some people sitting behind us who were Indian,
Yeah.
and I asked them, we were talking about the dubbing, and they're like, well, we were reading the subtitles too.
Oh,
we
really?
don't understand that language that they're showing here.
Yeah, there's so many different
there's so
again,
many languages in
yeah,
India.
we're ignorant. I'm ignorant to what's going on because the last film we saw, they're mixed of English and Indian or whatever language they were. So this one had no English at all. This was all in the native tongue.
Now, apparently, what's it, Rashid Shetty is from this area. So Debbie was asking, what did the people think about this? It seems to me, because I read a lot of, not critics, but normal people, Indian people's reviews of it, and they really loved that he showed this. And they were all saying, he's from this area, these are the traditions he grew up with, and they've never been in a film before. And I was reading how these traditions are slightly different than mainstream Hinduism. So even in India, not all these things are common. So people were like really happy that they showed this. And, there are a lot of, I grew up Catholic and my family, has rituals too, like in the village my family's from in Italy. There's a statue of the Virgin Mary that goes from one church to another. And that's the big feast day in the village. And they're always like, if you come back, you got to come then, because there's a big procession and everyone on the street makes these colorful, like paint, like artwork, how a flower petals that they're going to walk the procession over. So everyone gets pictures of it. So, there's still kind of ritual stuff like that, even in Europe now. But this was a look at a thing that's not done commonly.
No, and just the spectacle and the color, like you can't really see it in this poster behind me, but the deity that he's playing, or because Shiva, that's his father. In 1970, it was his father that disappeared.
Yeah.
So Shiva is, ultimately we see what happens, but Shiva, is a representation of this. The colors and like even fire bombs that are happening, and there's some camera stuff that's going on where he's doing wrestling moves. There's that bullfighting, the bull riding scene where they have the big.
Yeah. Well, it's bull racing. No, it's not water buffalo racing.
Right.
Now, this was one of my favorites.
And they really did that. He did that.
Yeah. And he really did it. And then they get into this big fight in the mud.
Right.
Because basically Shiva wins year after year. But this year, the landlord's son was a participant.
Yeah.
And they said the landlord's son was the winner. And Shiva may work for the landlord, but he wasn't going to accept that. Right. So he's like, Shiva is like, people are out there to defend the landlord's son, and Shiva's like beating the crap out of him in this mud puddle.
And a couple of things.
The landlord's like terrified.
A couple of the scenes I want to bring up just to.
Now, Debbie, did you like the scene in the mud?
No, because I don't like that mud stuff.
What do you mean mud stuff? Like fighting in the mud, or just mud in general?
Yeah, I don't like to see mud. I don't like to see, mud.
Wow.
I don't like.
I like the mud wrestling scene.
I'm a very clean person.
In Stripes, that's a good scene. You didn't like the mud wrestling scene in Stripes, I'm sure that right.
You're frozen.
Yeah, you're frozen.
No, we're fine. You're frozen. You might be frozen.
Couple of shout out scenes I want to
share. Earlier in Ohio, so probably I am frozen.
Yeah. I want to shout out a couple of scenes, Sean. One, have you seen Sicario?
The one drug dealing one?
Yeah. Where Benicio del Toro plays the assassin.
Yeah.
There was a scene in this one where Shiva comes in to the landlord's dinner, and he's got his wife and his kid there. And I swear to you, I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy has seen Sicario, because that scene was almost a frame to frame. I thought it was in the same place. Yeah. Ultimately, it ended differently, but I was amazed by that. And the other scenes, obviously, the last 15 minutes, are just
Deus ex machina.
I mean, if you, and that's the thing about seeing this in the movie theater, and it makes me really wish that I had seen RRR in the movie theater, just for the immersive feeling I had watching this one. that I just, and you know what's going to happen. You can see it. You can see it from a mile away.
Yeah.
But when it happens, I was cheering. I was cheering, like standing up and cheering in this thing. I just couldn't get over it. It's an amazing film. And the technical stuff that he was doing, the cinematography, the framing. Yes, these are always long.
Excellent night photography in the movie.
Just
too.
beautiful. I know these Indian films are longer than we're used to, and there's a lot of extra stuff they throw in, but it's so worth the wait. Go ahead.
Yeah, and another Ralph. At no point in that movie, at no point did I say, "Wow, when is this movie going to be over?"
Nope.
Nope.
You're waiting for the next thing. I'm waiting for the next big thing. I'm waiting for, and again, I don't know anything going on. I mean, I don't know the backstory about anything going on. You kind of figure it out. You kind of realize there's deities and they believe in the deity, and that was a big moment in this film when you realize what happened to that person, and how it affected the whole village.
And I'll tell you what, once I did the research, they really, it's amazing how much the movie lines up with those religious practices.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the filmmaker was very serious and, showing the practices from what is apparently his region. I don't know what language they spoke originally in this film. I don't think it's, most of the films we saw were Telugu, and I think the last one was Hindi, but I think this is another language entirely.
Yeah.
But
again, like I said, I guess that's partly what's good is I'm not getting caught up in the exposition. Doesn't matter.
The fact that we don't know what it is doesn't take away from the pleasure of the film.
Just right, exactly.
It's a visual experience.
And all his friends, all his buddies, I know some of those jokes were kind of goofy and silly, but man, I loved them, and I love those guys. And and also I know the scene. The scene was I thought the landlord represented the British Empire. Mm-hmm. And there's a scene in particular that brought me back to that movie we did about the massacre that happens in the when they shoot everybody.
Yeah.
Suda, I can't
remember on them.
I just felt like that's what they were going for. Now maybe I'm just reading into much stuff, because as we do these more and more, you're trying to find messages in everything you do, and you're trying to find similarities in other films. Like I said, Sicario, I'm looking at it going, this is Sicario, which tells me this filmmaker is a smart dude, man. I mean, I want to see more of his stuff. I don't know if there's any more. I don't know if this is first or last.
He's got on a couple other.
Well, I think I'd like to see those, but just amazing.
It's very charismatic.
Amazing. Yes.
And I think that's something that's helped us with all of the Indian films, is that the leads tend to be very charismatic. And me personally as a viewer, I like them. I enjoy watching them on the screen. And if I miss the details, if there's cultural things I don't understand, they're still engaging me. And, I still like, there wasn't a big dance sequence, but, I still like. Well, the thing about this is also true is that other than Sardar Unam.
Hey, I gotta go.
You gotta go?
Yeah, I gotta go give meds.
Okay, well, come back for what you watch, okay?
Yeah, come back for what you watch.
Okay.
All right.
I love you, baby.
Debbie.
You're gonna come home soon. But I just think, and this is the one thing that's been really true, is that all the Indian filmmakers really wear their emotions on their sleeve, it seems to me.
I was going to say that, you know what it is? If this were an American film, there's too much cynicism. And I'm a cynic. Don't get me wrong. I love sarcasm. I love cynicism. But I got to tell you, I love how innocent and how just open and thoughtful these films seem to be. Like they wallow in sentimentality.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as a negative. I adore it. Because
can I say something about my own career as a screenwriter? I'm a kind of a cynical guy too.
Right.
And the second film I did, it was a faith-based film called Hidden Secrets. And it's really melodramatic. And it was melodramatic when on the page. And the director, I went out to the shoot, and the director was pushing people to be very emotional.
Right.
In Hidden Secrets. And when I finally saw the film with a crowd, my wife and I, we took my nieces to a film festival in Pittsburgh. And people were like, literally, I thought the director had gone too far, but people were literally crying. My niece turns and looking around. She's like, Uncle Sean, they're weeping.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I know. And that taught me kind of what's going on here. It's like, don't be afraid to go for emotion.
Yeah, but you couldn't get away, Sean. You know you can't get away with that in an American film.
You can in faith-based.
Maybe faith-based, because
Yeah.
you got kind of an audience that's ready for that, right? But if you couldn't, this kind of just
They would make this very cynical. They would
Right.
never make this movie.
no,
They would make Aduhandan and a couple other ones.
right.
Maybe Tomball.
But ones like these, I can't think of an American film that, like even RRR or this one, that's similar to. I mean, maybe Drew or Chris would know better than I, but I can't think of an American film that has this kind of just innocence. It's innocent. And let's see, is there anything else we want to talk about? I just
can't- really enjoyed the film.
Yeah.
I enjoyed. There's a lot of physicality, and I'll tell you one thing. A lot of this, this was all mostly real too. Unlike R&R, a lot of the action and all was slowed down. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it slowed down and all, but there was a lot of special effects in other films. This was a lot of real stuff. I really enjoyed that. I enjoy. One thing I don't like about American films now is that so much of the action is CG. It just pisses me off.
right.
But I really enjoy.
Well, they're doing the Zack Schneider tricks in this one where they're slowing it down. But like,
it's real
I think
people.
it's practical. I think
Yeah.
they're practical effects, and just some of the camera effects where that camera's flipping upside down while he's doing a wrestling move on another dude.
Yeah,
It's amazing stuff. So it's all up there on the screen. These guys know how to spend the money
Mhm.
to get up on the screen. And I'm going to look for Indian films now to go to the theaters. I just can't get over.
yeah. Debbie and I saw that other one. It was part one of one something.
Yeah. Yeah.
that people were
And I like the more realistic, based in kind of realism, like the last one we did, even though it's not real, but that murder mystery thing. And I love R&R, RRR. I love this one, but I kind of want to go out and look for more of these in theaters, because that experience I had, I can't remember the last time I had that in an American film.
Yeah, it's like by seeing these films from another culture, another country, it's like falling in love with movies again. I've said that before.
Well, like I said, because you're not caught up in the exposition. It doesn't matter. It's just spectacle on the screen. Things I've never seen. That bull riding or whatever you're saying, the water buffalo riding scene, where the race is just insanity.
Yeah.
And it's ratcheted up, and it's just great. So here's my review. Double Yippee-Ki-Yay.
Mhm.
Yippee-Ki-Yay.
Yippee-Ki-Yay,
If you get to a
Yippee-Ki-Yay.
movie theater to see these, go to a movie theater. If it's going to stream, see it on streaming anyway. You have to see it.
I'm
Two thumbs
double
up.
thumbs up on it too. I really enjoyed it. And I think it really comes down to what you're saying. One thing that makes these films great is their lack of cynicism. They're just embrace of the medium, embrace of the story, embrace of the characters.
Right.
And the actors go all out. They are sentimental. They're romantic. They just let it all hang out. And I really enjoy it.
And it's a good thing you said the use of the medium, because man, they use the medium very well.
Yeah.
And I'm talking audio. I'm talking what I'm seeing up on the screen, cinematographers, everything they're doing is just worth every penny they're putting on the screen. And it just, as a viewer, I appreciate that. And I just can't wait to see another one of these. So there we go.
Play the Scream one more time.
Let's go. We'll scream out, head out to What'd You Watch? How's that sound?
That's great.
All right, everybody. Hey, welcome to What'd You Watch? We just finished our review of Kantara. And I'm sorry you guys didn't see it. I think if you ever get a chance, I think it's going to be streaming soon, probably.
I got to be honest, I felt a little like George in that episode that George wasn't in the Seinfeld episode. He was very upset about it. I mean, he was very upset. He goes, "Never do that to me again."
The Seinfeld references are just like everybody references Seinfeld.
Well,
It's such a
because
touchstone.
it's
I know.
part of our culture, Ralph.
I guess.
How'd the review go, by the way? How did it go? You guys give anything away?
We tried not to spoil it, but it's kind of a film that's hard to spoil because, frankly, there's a lot going on that we don't know. We didn't know what was going on.
I've done some extensive research, so
I have done a little bit, not extensive, but
And this was one that the people wanted us to watch, right? This was recommended by people.
No,
right?
this was not. This is recommended by a lot of people. There's another film coming out in the theaters. I mentioned to you guys. I don't know I forget the name. It's a sequel to one of them. So it's the second
maybe only
part.
2 of us will be on that one. That'll be good.
Well, you got to find a movie theater.
Are you talking about? I think it's Drishyam.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, the first one is streaming, and people are excited about the sequel too. So
okay, so that's
out
out
in theaters.
With the
streaming one.
I think starting.
The one that people are recommending that I want to see is the Gangs of Wasseypur or something.
Yeah, that's supposed to be very good. That's 2 movies.
And the 3 Idiots. They keep talking about the 3 Idiots too.
Yeah,
they keep saying that's the Indian Godfather or the Indian Goodfellas, either one.
Well, take your pick. They're both good.
It's
I'm
Star
listen. As you saw in the review, this film blew me away just seeing it at the movie theater.
Yeah.
And it made me realize I really wish I had seen RRR in the theater.
Yeah.
Because this was stunning. Now, as I said earlier, for some reason the music was blasting in the first half before the intermission or the interval. And I've seen other podcasters who reviewed the film said the same thing, that when they were watching it, it was super cranked up. And I don't know if that's
is that a cultural thing?
I don't know if the choice that the director made something, but it was ear splitting. I mean, ear splitting. And as you know, there's a huge yell that happens in this film. And let me just show you the yell. And this thing, which happens a lot, and it's just like, oh my God. And
I
music
love it.
was,
that's my favorite part of the movie.
It's fantastic, but it was so immersive. It was insane. It was great.
Well, you and the old couple commenting that it was so loud, it reminded me of when I saw The Hunt for Red October in the theater, and my brother and I thought it was amazing, and we asked my grandmother's boyfriend, what did you think? He said, that was great. And we said to my grandmother, what did you think? And she said, it was too loud, and I didn't like that part where he talked with his mouth full. So maybe it's just a generational response to volume. This
was legitimately
generational response to volume.
Debbie and Sean, right? This was legitimately super loud.
It was loud.
That's what old people would say. I understand.
But it's like when I saw Superman,
That's
the
right.
Man of Steel. I saw the IMAX of Man of Steel, and that was super loud as well. And it just, unlike this one, that one, I didn't like that in that film. This one I could take because it was so much fun. All right, so anyway,
well, I have to say honestly, the IMAX and the whatever the other equivalents are, they are assaultive.
Yeah,
I mean they're so loud. It's like if that's not for you, then it's really not.
Well,
for
that's
you,
how this one felt.
you.
But again, after
You're
the intermission,
paying extra, they want to give you one of those.
Right, give you all the sound.
After the intermission, it was back to normal. So, I don't know if that was a conscious choice because, like I said, I've heard other people say the exact same thing. So
it was really the whole first half of the movie.
Right to the intermission, right?
Interesting.
Right. So this is almost a 3-hour film, so interval, but
aren't they all?
It was a 5-second interval. It didn't last very long. All right, so let's do what you watch. Let's start with John.
Okay. I have to talk about one thing before I talk about the other thing. I know I only said we do.
Did you watch both? I mean, at least
a football game between Minnesota and Buffalo was the craziest thing I have ever seen in a football game. It was incredible. It ended on the most boneheaded thing I've ever seen, where the Buffalo fumbled in the end zone with 4 seconds left. Minnesota scores and ties the game. And then Buffalo in overtime marches down the field, looked like they were just going to score easily, and he throws a pick just right in front of the end zone. It was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. The last minute of the game was incredible. But if you get a chance, watch
speaking of football, how about those Commanders beating up on the Eagles?
That I cannot believe. I mean, everybody picked. Everyone picked Philadelphia, but that was good for them. Good for Heineke. I like him too. What I watched, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about it because I plan on doing a solo review on this anyway. Is I went to the movie theater and saw Black Adam starring Dwayne Johnson. I liked this movie. I wouldn't say it's a great movie, but compared to a lot of the Marvel films, and my knock on the latest Marvel films, there wasn't any of that. What was that?
Wakanda Forever?
I haven't seen that. And
Wakanda.
I wasn't a giant fan of the first one, so I don't know if I'm going to like. And I thought Chadwick Boseman was one of the best things in the first one, so I'm really not looking forward to that one. But anyway,
John, you'll like this one. The ladies are in power.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's great. Anyway, and it's not Namor, it's Namor. Yeah, he's Mexican now. Okay, don't even get me started on this, please. But anyway, Black Adam.
Who's that? What are you treating women and other ethnicities like real people? That's
crazy. I mean, I wouldn't take the canon of the character whose name reversed is Roman, who says things like Imperious Rex, and now he's got a Mexican heritage. But anyway, I don't want to talk about that. What I want to talk about is Black Adam. Dwayne Johnson, this has been a project that he's been trying to do since 2017. And it's a good movie. They brought in the Justice Society of America into the cinematic world, and they did a good job with that. I'm not crazy about everyone they picked in that. There are other characters I thought they could have used. Pierce Brosnan was great. Rock was, he was, but he was really a standout as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, I've heard he's the most fun, and not that everybody else is bad, but that he's really fun.
But there's a difference when he's on camera. There's a difference compared to everybody else, because even the side characters were just not memorable at all. But he did a good job. It's a good movie. It's one of these things. Like, I didn't walk out of there going, "Oh my God, wow, I can't wait to see another one." But I wasn't like, "Oh, that was awful." I enjoyed it. It was like a summer popcorn movie that I really enjoyed. He takes Black Adam. It was really the later Black Adam, not early with Captain Marvel. That was my only complaint. Is the only reference to Shazam or Captain Marvel was the Wizard. And in the comics, he was the villain of the whole Captain Marvel family. But it was a good movie. I'm going to do a long form review to really break it down. But I enjoyed it. And if you like that kind of movie, I think you'd like this movie. So anyway, and
I haven't seen it yet, but I will say I know who shows up in the end credits scene, and I'm happy to hear that he's going to continue to play that role. I think, and it's
listen, everybody knows because
I don't.
Yeah, please. It's all over the place. I mean, anyway, you'll be happy. It's very short, but it is really, really, really well done. And it's going to take that character in a different direction, which I am thrilled about, because that's my favorite character in all of comic books. So I'm glad they're doing something with that. So anyway, that's what I watched.
Oh, all right. Drew.
Well, I'm going to talk about a movie that I suspect will maybe do an episode on, so I'm not going to talk that much about it, but just also don't want to spoil it. But I saw Barbarian, which I thought was really good, really unsettling, really smart with the casting, the way they tell the story. Even like the last minute of the movie was actually really touching, which I didn't expect. But that's directed by Zach Kreger, who was in The Whitest Kids You Know, which is the comedy troupe, and he plays Abraham Lincoln in my favorite Whitest Kids You Know sketch, where he gets hammered in the ass to death because he won't stop talking during the Hamlet play by John Wilkes Booth. And it would be really wonderful to have him on and ask him about that, because that's a really special bit of comedy. My wife hates that so much. So. I'm
working on that.
So I saw two movies that are new movies that I liked to different degrees. The first one is Vengeance, the movie written and directed by B.J. Novak. It's smart. It's interesting. It's a thriller. It's a mystery. It's a comedy. It's written by, directed, and starring him. And it asks like these really important questions. Should every person have their own podcast? But also some other interesting stuff as well. And I thought it was worth watching. I believe you can rent it on Amazon. It's streaming, included on Peacock, and that was worth a watch. The biggest revelation for me, I mean, I've always liked him. I think he's funny, but Ashton Kutcher is really good. He's really, really good. He dresses like Elvis in the new movie with more scarves, but he's really good, and a cowboy hat, obviously. But the movie that we watched last night, which I think is going to be up for a lot of awards and things, and it deserves it, is The Good Nurse, the new movie with Jessica Chastain and Eddie Redmayne, about a woman who discovers that one of her colleague nurses may be murdering people. And it's really good. It's got excellent performances. There's one actor named Gabe Fazio who I recognize. I've seen him in some stuff. He's only in a few scenes as a grieving husband, and it's just searing. It's just heartbreaking performance. But what I didn't realize until I started watching the movie is it's directed by Tobias Lindholm. And Tobias Lindholm did one of my all-time favorite movies ever, which is called The Hunt. Not that The Hunt, but The Hunt, starring Mads Mikkelsen, also known as
Good film.
Jagten,
Great film.
from 2012. And the way that movie, the premise of that movie is that there's a man who's a teacher in a small town, and everybody loves him, and he lives alone. He doesn't have a family. And one day a little girl says, "He touched me." And everything goes completely insane. And you spend the whole movie, you're not sure what to feel, what to think. And it's mostly just people having conversations of various intensity in places that like a house or a school or whatever. And this movie does the same thing. It takes these just places that you recognize, like a living room, a hospital, a lobby, and it infuses them with this dread and eeriness, and it's really well done. It's not a fast movie.
English language?
Yes, it's English language. It's only an hour and 40 some minutes, and there's also a documentary along with it called Capturing the Killer Nurse, which I watched a little bit of, which is based on the true story because it's on Netflix. So of course, it's a true story. But I recommend that you watch The Good Nurse. I really recommend that you watch The Hunt, because that was really worth watching.
That's a good film.
Yep.
That guy's a good actor, Mags. All right, Chris.
Okay, so I finally caught up with, or not finally, it's only been out for a week or two, but I finally caught up with Blockbuster, now appearing on Netflix. So it's the 10-episode, half an hour workplace comedy about the last Blockbuster. It's not based on the actual last Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon. This one's in Minnesota or Michigan. And
Let's remind everybody you were a Blockbuster employee.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I was a Blockbuster employee for a number of years. I was a manager at various levels, and back when you could, I paid my rent with the paychecks that they gave me. Back in the glory days of VHS.
Such good days.
As far as that's concerned. But overall, it's your standard workplace comedy. It's not too terrific. There's, unrequited relationships and will they, won't they, and things like that. It is kind of fun to kind of, keep the whole block, but it's basically business trying to stay afloat is what it comes down to. And naturally for me, there's a lot of little in jokes that I get and enjoy. There's a lot of movie references, but to be honest with you, I think their movie references are pretty shallow. And I think it's like they want to make everyone feel like they're in on the joke in the reference, so they're not that deep. But there was one episode where they do inventory, which brought back some trauma for me, because inventory was one of the reasons why I eventually had to give up. We actually used to do it overnight. It was an overnight thing because we were open from 10 in the morning till midnight. So anyway, long story short, Blockbuster, it's not fantastic. It's part of the people who made it were the people who did Brooklyn Nine-Nine, if you've ever seen that show. It's very good. It's not as good as that show. Hopefully, if it gets another season, it'll mature into something a little better. But there's always that part of me in the back of my mind. It's like, eventually they can always use that tag. You can just see the lines right now when they, Netflix cancels Blockbuster again.
Right.
You can see that, like, the moment they cancel it, that's going to be the joke that everybody pounds into the ground.
Chris, was it an accurate representation of working at a Blockbuster? I mean,
oh no.
Okay.
Well, in the sense that
that's what I was going to ask.
They spend most of the time in the back room.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because my biggest problem with the series is that it's a comedy that's not funny, which is a problem.
Yes, that's true.
But when I started watching it, I didn't know much about it other than who was in it. And I like the people who are in it from Fresh Off the Boat and Brooklyn Nine-Nine and stuff. I thought it was a sitcom set in the 90s or the 80s even, in a Blockbuster. And I wish it was. I think that would have been better. And I think that I would have loved to have, because I would be like, well, Chris, how real is it? And they could do it very, very real.
Yeah, like The Office. Like do it like The Office, right? Yeah.
But it was also, it was funny to see the little mentions of it in something like the Captain Marvel movie. That wasn't a big part of the movie, but they gave me that nostalgia, and it was yummy. And that show should be set in that way.
There is that doc, The Last Blockbuster.
Yeah, I saw that.
A lot of actors worked at Blockbuster and had some pretty cool stories. I was in Ellicott City this weekend, and there's a t-shirt shop, and they had Blockbuster t-shirts. And I was going to buy you one, but they were small. I couldn't, and they had none in the back office. I'm like, oh my God, this is such a perfect shirt.
Yeah, that would be. It's funny. I know that the actual last blockbuster in Bend, I think a huge part of its revenue stream is basically selling bumper stickers and T-shirts and things like that. It's because they're like people who are like, if they're anywhere near there, they stop by and they want a little piece of a nostalgia for them.
Right. I have a VHS rewinder that when I bought it had an old movie with the blockbuster Be Kind Rewind in there, and I was like, I gotta have that. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
There was one other thing I did see on Netflix, totally worth watching. It's called "Is That Black Enough for You?" and it is a documentary about black filmmakers in the United States. And it's the funny thing is the image on it is all 70s blaxploitation. And while that's a huge part of the documentary, it actually really goes back to the early days of Hollywood and, different periods of time and different filmmakers who I actually had no idea about. It's really worth it. It's about 2.5 hours, a little on the long side, but it has a ton of great interviews with actors who came about in the 70s and did stuff in the 70s and into the 80s. Lawrence Fishburne. There's a bunch of great actors in it that kind of talk about what it's like and what it means to have your own film, and have your own film culture as a part of the greater film culture. And, they talk a lot about the movies that inspired them and, things like that. But it's called, Is That Black Enough for You? And it's really good.
And that's on Netflix.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Cool. Check that one out. That sounds great. All right, Sean and Debbie, do you want to do one together or is it got an individual? How
we're separate today.
I can see that. I'm just asking, how do you want to do this?
Did you watch anything, Debbie?
Well, I'm talking to you guys from Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio. I'm taking care of my family, they all have, my mother, my two brothers have COVID. Oh. So I'm here to help them. But the show I watched was Infinity. And Sean and I watched it together, but I loved it. It's on Netflix.
Oh, The Search for Infinity?
The Search for Infinity. Sorry, Sean.
It's a documentary.
It's unbelievably good.
It never ends, right?
It talks about what?
It never ends, right?
It's pretty good.
Thank you.
It goes on forever. But the most important thing about that film is there is a concept that three of the mathematicians expressed, and that was what got them into be mathematicians and scientists. Actually, was the feeling that they got when they first tried to comprehend infinity, and that's when usually we're about 8 or 9 or 10, and we go out on a summer's night. And we look at the sky and we try to count the stars, and you get this total. And I think I've mentioned before about the Greeks, how they concluded about infinity, how it made them feel. And that is a total insignificance how you feel. And they all spoke of that. And it's so common to feel this way. And there is that one thing that it's called nomenos. And it was very common for the Greeks at that time. They were very intelligent. They would go out at night and search the skies and try to feel this feeling. And it was very common. But basically, infinity is so beautiful and enormous and godlike. You know what I mean? And when you go past it, and I know we talked about this before on this show about God, but when you think of infinity, you think of God and how insignificant we are compared to God. And yet, if you go push yourself a little bit further beyond that feeling of insignificance, is that love. There's a place where you go of being so frightened of the unknown, and then you push yourself. And this is all spiritually. This is not something that you learn, but it's something that you experience with infinity and the understanding. And that's what I love about this film. It really makes you think deep.
I think of Einstein when I hear infinity. I know that's simple, but
I think of Buzz Lightyear.
Oh, he's on there. Einstein is.
I assume he would be. And that movie Insignificance, you said Insignificance is about Einstein and Marilyn Monroe. So that's interesting. The only tattoo I ever wanted to get, and I'm never going to get a tattoo, but if I did, I wanted the infinity symbol on my wrist right here. I just thought it's just super cool. But
Oh, you got to put that in the tramp stamp.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ralph, I thought you were going for the tramp stamp.
no, that's
No.
Or just get
Well, let
it
me,
across your eyes.
Yeah.
not going to happen. I'm not going to ruin this temple. This temple is so. Sean,
I've
what about
already
you?
ruined mine.
Nice
But
job, Debbie. That's great.
Like it.
I watched two things, both kind of disappointing. One film I saw a trailer for right before COVID hit was One Night in Soho, the Edgar Wright film.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
And I really was looking forward to seeing it, and I saw it streaming. So I watched it, and I got to admit, I was really disappointed.
Yeah.
I did not like it. It's probably the least favorite Edgar Wright film I saw.
Yeah.
You know, so it starts off well, but I think it goes nowhere. And, you know, the casting gives everything away because they have Diana Riggs in it, you know, and she's in an English film. Diana Riggs takes place in swinging London, some of it. And is she just the kindly landlord? I didn't think she came out of her not working much to be in a film to play 3 scenes as the quirky landlady, you know. So one of those films where casting gives it away. And then I rewatched High Plains Drifter,
Great film.
Clint Eastwood film, which is a kind of confusing all over the place thematic film. But, you know, it's a revenge story. It's a ghost story. You know, he's probably the ghost of someone who died, but it's really rapey and mean-spirited. And
That's
if he's
ugly.
like an avenging person, it's like, would someone who's there to revenge injustice, like essentially rape women and, you know, just commit periodic cruelty? So it's to me, it's a fascinating 70s Western, but I don't know, a little rapey for today.
So you recommending it or not?
If you like rapey,
Oh
you know,
my gosh.
it's really strong.
Maybe if you want to see a movie about what vengeance means, you should watch Vengeance before you watch High Plains Drifter to get a little, you know,
I
more
don't know, there are more
contemporary take.
horses.
It's a good film. It's a good film.
There are probably more horses in High Plains Drifter. High Plains Drifter is a great film, but just because it's great doesn't mean it ages well. There's nothing you can do about that.
Nothing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, like Debbie, I watched something to learn something. So I watched on Netflix. I watched a documentary called Orgasm Inc.
Oh,
And
That's
it's about
fun.
a woman. It's about a woman who started a collective teaching women who had trouble having orgasms. She would train them to have 15-minute long orgasms. And it turned out, I thought I was going to watch this and have a little fun, but it turns out it was a cult.
Yeah.
And
Oh, man.
It's like Sexium instead of Nexium.
yeah, exactly. Same idea where, you know, it seemed like a good idea. She had women on tables and she trained these guys to figure out where to touch to have a 15-minute orgasm. And it ended up that they were just slaves and people were in corners, and it just ended up being just a disgusting story.
It sounds
But,
like, though, they gave you good skills, though, right?
Well, there was this one technique that I thought might be useful. So, anyway, and it's a one-off, so it's good. You just watch it.
Yeah, that's
like
usually all I'm
Drew's
good for,
saying,
too, so.
Drew's saying it's like it starts on this, as all these do. It's like the ideas these people have seem legitimate, and then you realize, oh my God, they're just grifters and they're cult people, and they want to abuse people. It's just disgusting. But there were a couple things I learned that I thought were fun, but we'll have to deal with that later. So good job with what you watched.
Hang on one second.
Yep.
Before we go, when you guys are telling me about movies that you've watched, sometimes I'll go to Netflix while we're talking and I'll throw it on my queue so I don't forget.
Right.
And so I opened up Netflix and I saw a movie that I didn't know existed. I didn't know it would be allowed legally to exist. It's called R.I.P.D. 2, Rise of the
What?
Damned.
Oh
And
my God.
R.I.P.D. is one of the worst movies ever made
Awful.
in the history of the
Awful.
film
Awful.
business.
R.I.P.D.
And
Yeah.
Who
in
thought that
R.I.P.D.
was a good idea?
And
That's
it
what I
stars
wanted to-
Jeffrey Donovan, who I actually really like. So I might watch it for everyone just to let you know how much
Would you
you
do
should
that?
watch
Would
it.
you do that?
I
Oh,
would
by
do
the
that.
way, a
One
film
other
that everyone
R.I.P.
talked about.
Speaking of R.I.P.D., R.I.P. Gallagher,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
who passed away this week. And if you don't know who Gallagher is, he's a comedian that used to chop watermelons and
Yeah.
get the
And
Oh, I
Kevin
didn't know
Conroy.
that. Was it
Kevin
him or his
Conroy, the
brother?
voice of
mentioned
the
that.
Yes,
animated
he
Batman.
died as well.
Yeah.
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which one died? Because his
both
brother
died.
was going around with the same exact act.
Well,
The
the
famous
original
No,
Gallagher
the real
guy.
guy. The real guy.
OG.
Look,
The OG.
at least democracy didn't die this week. So that's
Where did he go?
That's
Why
nice.
did he die?
Gallagher.
Why or how? What do you mean?
How did what was the
Shortness
cause of
of
death?
breath.
He accidentally, one of his hammers fell on his head.
Oh, see,
Shortness
I
of
thought he
breath.
choked on flying watermelon, but I guess
He might
it's
have
basically
choked
the
on a
same thing.
seed. All right. Rest
We
in
don't- I
peace,
don't know how he
Gallagher.
passed.
What's the
Yeah.
what's the Batman guy's name?
Kevin Conroy.
Kevin Conroy. All right. I don't know
Iconic.
what film we're going to do next week, to be honest, guys, because there's we're getting all these suggestions for more Indian films, and
Why don't we do the number 2? Why don't we do the second one that pulled?
The Padmavat.
Yeah, Padmavat.
but there's
It's
that
either-
other
It's either that or R.I.P.D. 2, Rise of the Damned. It's up to you guys.
Or
You know what? There's a
Moonfall.
part of me that would love to do
Moonfall's
RIP too. So let's see what the comments. Let's see if there's any comments about.
Okay.
I mean, we
Fair enough.
can do that one you talked about, but let's see what happens in the comments if anything happens, and then we'll decide. Sound
All
good?
right. Yeah, we're listening to you guys, so tell
right,
us.
let us
That's
know.
why you got to subscribe.
Yep.
Hit the like button.
All
Smash
right,
it.
everybody. Have a good week, and we'll
Like us.
see you next week. It's actually Thanksgiving week, so we'll definitely do the Tuesday, and then we'll celebrate Thanksgiving.
Awesome.
Not together, maybe. I mean, we could.
Hey, listen, we've got a lot to give thanks with this.
Friendsgiving. All right, everybody. Have a good week, and we'll catch you next week.